I was upstairs in my house in Jerusalem. I knew that Hirsch and a friend of his were sleeping out, camping somewhere. I didn't know exactly where. The first sirens, the bomb sirens, went off in Jerusalem, so I ran down the stairs to wake my two daughters so we could get into the bomb shelter in Jerusalem. When we got out 10 minutes later with the all clear, I normally don't use my phone on the Jewish Sabbath, but it was an emergency and I needed to know where my son was. So I turned my phone on, I believe at 8:23 in the morning. And when I turned it on, there were two texts in a row from Hirsch at 8:11. The first one said, "I love you." And immediately at 8:11 also it said, "I'm sorry." And so I knew immediately wherever he was, it was a terrible situation. I took it to mean, I love you and I'm sorry because whatever is going to happen is going to cause you tremendous pain and worry. Since that time, I of course tried calling him right back. There was no answer. I texted him a couple times, "Are you okay?" I've not heard from him since the text I received at 8:11 on Saturday morning. We've since found out from putting together eyewitnesses from a picture from inside of a bomb shelter that we saw. We tried to put together who was in that bomb shelter with him. We've spoken to eyewitnesses. We know that he was injured in a gun battle. I mean, they were all civilians at a music festival. They were fish in a barrel, sitting in this bomb shelter. Terrorists came to the door. They were throwing grenades in, shooting machine guns. And we know that Hirsch's arm from the elbow down was severed, was blown off, and that he tied a tourniquet around with his shirt. And Hamas came in after the gunfire settled down and said, "Anyone who can walk, stand up and walk out." We are told that he was completely calm. I think he was probably in shock. And he got up and he walked out with 5 other people, young people from the music festival, 2 young women, 3 other young men. They were put on a pickup truck and driven away by Hamas. Then the police told us one thing they knew is that the last known cell signal from his phone was on the border with Gaza.
As this tragedy was unfolded on Saturday morning, me and my other siblings were talking to my mom on the phone, trying to calm her down. Things were sort of calm when she heard a lot of gunfire outside of her shelter, and we tried to calm her down. That's when I dropped off the call. And both my brother and my sister were on the call with her as the terrorist barged into her home. And we heard a little bit of screaming, and that was our last contact with her. There was no shooting on the call, and the neighbors downstairs also didn't hear any shooting. My mom used the little bit of Arabic that she picked up working as a nurse in the hospital in Soroka for 20 years to calm down the terrorists. And it is our hope, which is a little bit ridiculous at this stage to say that the optimistic scenario here is that she's held hostage in Gaza and not dead on the street of the kibbutz where we grew up. My mom is a 66-year-old lady, proud mother of me and my 3 other siblings who are in the room with me, along with 7 grandkids.
My mother, Adrian, is missing and was probably taken by Hamas terrorists to the Gaza Strip. My mother is an exceptional human being. She spent most of her adult life as a nurse in the community and then as a midwife in a hospital. When she walked into a delivery room, she saw a human being in front of her. Not a religion, not a race, not a hijab, not an Orthodox Jew. Always the human being she saw. We once calculated that my mother has brought in thousands of lives into this world. When Hamas walked into my mother's room in Be'eri, they saw her there alone, but they did not see a human being.
Please, do not think of us only as a headline. We're more than that. I'm here with my family, my two sisters. We grew up in New York City. We like to say we are the proud outcome of the New York public education system. Still have family out in New Jersey, Long Island. And I'd like to talk about family before talking about Itai. Out of some twist of fate, we became family. In addition to us, we've identified about 10 other families like us that have a U.S. citizen missing. Itai, my son, joined the army about a year ago. He's in the armed corps. He was serving on the border of Gaza. The last time that we heard from him was Saturday morning, where he said that they were under attack. We know that he was active, that he was in communication for a while, but since then, silence. The formal indication that we received from the IDF is that he is defined as missing in action.
Kibbutz Nirim was attacked in the morning of this Saturday. I have children and grandchildren who live there with me. Kibbutz Nirim is no more. It was destroyed in a barbaric, inhuman attack in which dozens of my friends, my neighbors, were killed. Many dozens more are either known to be hostages or missing. I'm here speaking today, reaching out to my son Sagi, who grew up on the kibbutz, Sagi Dekelchen. He's an arm length away in Gaza, evidently, but couldn't be farther from me and our family right now. I grew up in Connecticut, as you can probably hear from the accent, but I've never felt farther away from there either. Sagi is the father, as you can see, 35 years old, the father of two beautiful daughters, and his wife is now pregnant with their third daughter. Sagi is exactly the kind of son that every father would want to have. A leader, a friend, a loving man. He and many other such young men on the kibbutz are now missing after having tried to repulse the attack by evidently hundreds of Hamas terrorists and looters. Many died in the process. Sagi was not found, and we have heard or seen no trace of him since then. The survivors of the kibbutz, on the kibbutz, we were a community of 400. At the moment, we know of 160 survivors. The rest have either died or are, as we said, prisoners or missing. The survivors call this a pogrom. What happened to us? It's not a war. It's not a fair fight. It is a pogrom. Hundreds of heavily armed, well-organized terrorists walked, rode, ran over the border with one object in mind, and that is to kill, maim, and destroy civilian life along the border. As such, it seems to me that the United States, my original home, and still a very beloved place for me, always wants to be and must be on the side of good. Hamas is evil. It's difficult for me to say. I'm what is called a peacenik in Israel, as many of the kibbutz members are in our area. But what we've witnessed, this kind of savagery, this kind of inhumanity, must be stopped. And as a result, like the other 5 people on this stage who would prefer to be anywhere but here right now, do appeal to the United States government, to the Congress, to do what they can on the side of good here. We're waiting for Sagi to come home. We do not know what fate he met along, as I said, with dozens of other people from the kibbutz. And just so you understand, these aren't all 35-year-old men. These are children. These are aged people and everything in between. So if there ever was a moment of good against evil, in the harshest terms, this is it.
I do have friends that are currently engaging in the combat around my home, around Kibbutz Be'eri, and I can appreciate the total mayhem and mess that the combat environment is creating. But I think that after 3 days, more than 3 days now, it is more than a reasonable request to have somebody from the Israeli government or the US administration approach us with any type of information that they may have on our family members.